Article 138 of the Revised Penal Code, inciting to rebellion or insurrection. Article 138. The penalty of prison mayor in its minimum period shall be imposed upon any person who, without taking arms or being in open hostility against the government, shall incite others to the execution of any of the acts specified in Article 134 of this code, by means of speeches, proclamations, writings, emblems, banners, or other representations tending to the same end. These are the elements of inciting to rebellion or insurrection. Number one, the offender does not take arms or is not in open hostility against the government. Second element, the offender incites others to the execution of any of the acts of rebellion. And number three, the inciting is done by means of speeches, proclamations, writings, emblems, banners, or other representations tending to the same end. Let us go through some phrases here as used in the article. The phrase does not take arms or the phrase is not in open hostility against the government. This should be the case because if the offender instead takes arms or if the offender is in open hostility against the government, then he will no longer be liable for inciting, but he will instead be liable for rebellion. Because rebellion is basically the taking up of arms against the government, rising publicly and taking arms against the government for the purpose of overthrowing that government. Another phrase as used in the article, the offender incites others to the execution of any of the acts of rebellion. When you say incite or to incite, it means to urge or persuade another person to act in a violent or unlawful way. Hence, the offender to be liable here must incite others to rise publicly and take up arms against the government for any of the purposes of rebellion as stated in Article 134 of the Revised Penal Code. And when you say by means of speeches, proclamations, writings, emblems, banners, or other representations tending to the same end, take note here that the medium through which the speeches are made or the proclamations are made or the writings are made is immaterial. They can be done through print, broadcast, or at present even in social media like Facebook. Now, how do we distinguish between the crime of inciting to rebellion and the other crime of proposal to commit rebellion? When you say inciting, the person who incites may or may not have decided to commit the rebellion. But when you say, but in the crime of proposal to commit rebellion, the person who proposes has already decided to commit rebellion and he proposes its execution to another person. Okay? Another distinction. The person who incites or the act of inciting by that offender is made publicly. Whereas in proposal to commit rebellion, the person who proposes the execution of the crime uses secret means or he communicates the proposal privately to another person. Can the offender propose the execution of the crime publicly? Yes, he can. For as long as he has already decided to commit rebellion and he proposes its execution, he announces on Facebook and tells the person whom he intends to propose the crime to or propose the commission of the crime to publicly through Facebook. he can do that. But generally, when you say proposal to commit rebellion, the offender here uses secret means, or he communicates the proposal privately. Whereas in inciting to rebellion, the act of inciting is always made publicly, not secretly or privately. Take note, in both proposal to commit rebellion and inciting to rebellion, if the persons induced by the proposal or by the incitement should actually commit the rebellion, the one who proposed or the one who incited will now be liable as a principal by inducement in the crime of rebellion. So, can they still be held liable for either inciting to rebellion or proposal to rebellion? No more. Because if the persons whom they proposed the commission of the crime of rebellion actually commit the rebellion, or if the persons whom they incited to commit the crime of rebellion actually commit rebellion, they will now be considered as principals by inducement, such that they now become liable for the rebellion itself.